Mr. Sandeep Tyagi, I request you to please join the dais. So I start with the profile of Mr. Ashish Arora. He is our session moderator, founder and managing director, HR NXC, a one-stop human capital consulting firm. Is a consultant to organization assisting with the identification of the best strategies. He holds an MBA degree from Mumbai University and has almost 25 years of industry experience. He spent his first 17 years in building and managing human resource function at national and international level. He has held leadership HR positions with Computer Associates, APEC Director, Sintel, Global Director, and Otis. He had been Director for Executive Education in the McKinsey's Indian School of Business, Hyderabad. He is a Sundoor Master Certified Firewalk Instructor. His program, Empowering Leaders for Breakthrough Performance, has featured in BBC News. Mr. Ashish has a real passion for his work and he lives with this mission, powering organizations, empowering people. We welcome you, sir.
Next eminent speaker is Mr. Jacob. Mr. Jacob is Chief People Officer, Apollo Hospitals Enterprises Limited. Mr. Jacob has over 19 years of experience, varied across HR consulting, international HR, startup HR, and large-scale change management HR. Mr. Jacob has worked with organizations such as Feedback Ventures, Emirant Airline in Dubai, and Oberoi Realty. He is alumnus of Tapai Management Institute, Manipal, having done his PGDM with a specialization in HR. Mr. Jacob is a recipient of several national and international awards. Some of them are recognized as one amongst the most powerful HR professionals in India by the World HR Congress 2010, HR Leadership Award at the Asia Pacific Summit 2011, HR Professional of the Year for 2012, Contribution to Organization Award, Asia HRD Congress 2013, Jakarta.
Our next eminent speaker is Mr. Kaushik Chakrabarti, Director HR Business, Partner and Head of Learning and Development, Jones Lang LaSalle. Mr. Kaushik is a senior HR and learning and development professional with 17 plus years of experience across industries and functional areas. He has worked with reputed organizations like Royal Bank of Scotland, Max New York Life, ICICI Prudential, and Blue Dart. He works extensively in the area of leadership development, organizational development, human psychology, human relationships, change management, diversity, and CSR. He has touched many young minds through his talks in prestigious institutions across the country and has been a regular influencer in social media on corporate and political leadership in the country. He was named as one of the top 10 thought leaders in the country by the MTC Global in 2014 and was adjudged as top 50 T&D person by HRD Congress 2015. We welcome you, sir.
Our next eminent speaker is Mr. Dipayan Singh Sharma. Mr. Dipayan, a seasoned HR professional with 15 years of experience. Currently, he is working with Accenture as VP HR. His focus is on competency architecture within the talent architecture of COE. Before joining Accenture, he has worked with British Petroleum, Vardhaman Group, etc. He has done MHRM from SIBM Pune and graduation in science from Banaras Hindu University. We welcome you, sir.
And next eminent speaker among us is Mr. Sandeep Tyagi, Director HR, Samsung Electronics India. Mr. Sandeep Tyagi is a seasoned HR professional having approximately 25 years of experience in different companies like NTPC, Delphi Automotives, Sony India, Xerox, Bharti Airtel, Haier Appliances, Videocon Industries, and Samsung Electronics. He is an MBA from prestigious FMS New Delhi. He is currently working as Director HR with Samsung Electronics India. He is heading the business HR of Samsung India, looking after talent acquisition, talent engagement, and talent development for the company. Now I would like to request Mr. Ashish Arora, our session moderator, to start the session, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, boys.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, people, good morning. Come on, the HR people, half of you are trainers. When you train, do you like this kind of good morning? Obviously not, right? We need some high energy. Now I know we got a panel full of all men here, navigating a future of HR. It's a little unfortunate, it's all men. I'm sure DMA, next time when you do a panel like that, you'll have some women this side. All right? Anyway, since we have a limited time, we're already about 20 minutes late from my agenda. I've got to push. So, thank you DMA for inviting us, and I'm saying on behalf of my colleagues sitting here for this discussion, and such a very, very interesting discussion when 4 or 5 of Gen X HR managers, right? We're all Gen X, right? Unless somebody says, no, I'm Gen Y still. 5 of Gen X managers sitting here and navigating the future HR leadership in the next 5-10 years to come. I don't think we can talk 10 years because the market changes every 5 years so dramatically, you really can't talk more than that. So thank you for Jacob, Kaushik, Sandeep, and Dipayan joining on this one. So I'm going to be doing, since I'm the session moderator, I have a lesser role to play. Right? It's they who have to speak, so I have an easy job, really. So my job is really to ask questions, and your job is to answer those questions. Okay, jokes apart, people. What I plan to do in the next 75 minutes or so, and we'll leave the last 15 minutes for Q&A. Race, I've been thinking about this subject. I've been in HR for a good 27, 28 years now, and the last few years have been in consulting. So a lot of thinking about this subject. So I'm going to raise some pertinent questions to our panelists over here, and then panelists can take a pick who wants to answer those questions. Right? And the questions will really range a wide variety from when we're talking about navigating future HR. So it'll really range a wide variety from business to technology to data analytics to the HR business partner role and to the juggler that we are as HR managers. Right? So to start with, just to set the context, I personally feel at this juncture of my experience, I will not say age, right? Experience, that HR is really at crossroads, right? And if, as HR managers, if we don't do something, if we keep sitting at that crossroad, we'll get run over, right? Like railway track, we'll get run over. We've got to do something about this, and I'm so grateful to DMA to organize this kind of conclave that we're talking about what next, because it is a question that we must ask. And I say this because I have a 20-year-old son who is, in the next 3 to 4 years, will be in the corporate India. Right? And those who have that aged sons and daughters, you will know what I'm talking about, because this is a very, very different generation, very different. I come up with simple examples from a personal life. Even today, when my dad, who's about 79, he asks me some question or tells me something, I said, yes, Dad. And I tell my son, 20-year-old, he said, why, Dad? Right, simple. So that's the reason they're Gen Y or Gen Millennial. And lots of things. I was at a client site, and from a corporate perspective, day before yesterday, in Bombay, meeting a very large real estate developer who's looking at now, because they've got some $200 million funds from some large PE, they're looking at professionalizing the entire HR. So they're talking about, we do HR outsourcing, so we met them to see how we can help them in HR. So after listening to our sales pitch for about an hour or so, he said, I would like to have, this is a real estate company. This guy is next second generation. He's educated in some London school, did in some B school in London, not the LBS. And he says, I'm looking at my HR to sit in my boardroom and ask questions to my CEOs and my business heads. Do you think you as a HR head can do that for me? A real estate developer, second generation, which we think are totally non-HR kind of companies, a real estate company. And this is not one example, gents and ladies, or I can give you hordes and hordes of examples of entrepreneurs talking that language. Forget the corporate world where people, anyway, HR sits on the board. So I know you asked a question earlier that, HR has to market. I don't think HR needs to market anymore. I think we have marketed well enough. It's about outthinking ourselves as to what next. Like business is outthinking itself what next. It's about outthinking ourselves. That's what we need to do. So quickly, the good news and the bad news on the crossroad. The good news is that HR professionals have more opportunity to influence the business than ever before. Very good news. The good news is, if you look at some of the research, the Conference Board 2014 research talked about that human capital issues are #1 challenge in the boardrooms. CEB 2014. The research shows that the leadership profile of CHRO and the leadership profile of CEOs is pretty much similar. Research shows, this is the Invest, IVCA is the venture capital body in the country, very large body, all the venture capital and private equity. They had a conference earlier this year in February. They talked about venture capitalists and private equity companies which are investing millions and billions of dollars. They said HR issues are increasingly they form a part of their valuation thing. When they look at valuation, HR is important for them. And finally, the EOU research recently talks about that 1/3 of the issues, or more than 1/3 of the issues discussed in the boardroom are HR related. Whether it's succession planning, talent review, executive compensation, governance, strategy, CSR, ethics, culture, and so on and so forth. That's the good news, people. We're already there. What's the risk? I will not say bad news, just the risk. The risk is that performance bar for all of us is much higher. Right? We can't be the backroom support enabling function sitting behind, in one corner of the office. No way. The risk is high because people are looking at, companies are looking at, entrepreneurs are looking at that how can HR really contribute. Right? Therefore, opportunities of both success and failures. If we outthink, we succeed. If we don't, if we continue to remain in the avatar that we have been in the last 5, 7, 10 years, I will not even say 20 years back because it's changed a lot in the last 20 years. If in the last 5, 7, 10 years avatar, if we continue, we are a failure for sure. So there has to be a massive change. Right? The shift from the typical policy administration, compensation, employee engagement, and so on and so forth that we do, right, to what can we really contribute to the business outcome. Right? That's what we're talking about, and I'm sure our panelists over here will obviously give their views. What do we mean by that? So, what we're exploring today is 10 things. I mean, I put those 10 things, and of course, panelists are open to say more, and you're free to ask many questions because it is a discussion. It is not obviously speaker and somebody's just hearing. It's obviously a discussion. So, what we're exploring today is following. We're looking at, if we're talking about the new landscape, what is the new landscape in the business? Therefore, the role of HR. What is the new landscape from a globalization perspective? Therefore, the role of HR, and so on and so forth. Technology and innovation, talent supply, shrinking, talent mobility, massive, talent engagement, biggest issue, data and analytics, massive issue because so much of data we're sitting on all the time. Demography and diversity, demography from a perspective of people moving all over the world, baby boomers, Gen Y, Gen X, millennials, all of them are working today. Right? And the diversity we're talking about, diversity of sex, caste, creed, education, all kinds of stuff. And finally, the role of HRBP. What does HRBP really mean? Right? From a new perspective, from the new age perspective or a 2020 perspective, if I may say. And finally, I'm going to ask a question to us and to you that HR has to be juggling the orchestra all the time. So what do we really do from a futuristic perspective when we navigate the new landscape? What do we juggle and how do we really play this orchestra like a great Zubin Mehta? Right? So this is what I'm exploring. The format that I'm following, if that's okay by all of you, I'm going to do a scenario building very quickly in every minute and then ask you a question and throw it open to the panelist to answer the question. And anybody can take the question, right, one by one. It's going on these 10 parameters. So let's look at the first parameter, business. We know how business are changing. The rate of change and also the magnitude of change is phenomenal. All right? Imagine just a simple thing, the mobile, all of us are using smartphones. Imagine 10 years back and today, what a massive change. And the next 6 months, Airtel has already launched 4G. Once Reliance launches Jio in the next 3 months, 4 months, we are talking about a different language in the mobility completely. That's the rate of change of business and the magnitude of change. If that's the way business is changing, right, competition has become fierce and fierce. All of us know that we are fighting competition every time. Right? And we are living in this new mobile, internet, Google, whatever we call it, era, where the second largest country becomes the Facebook in the world. Second largest country today is the Facebook. Right? The question that I have for the panelists is, how do HR professionals what do they need to know, first of all, about the business, and how can they become effective in today's or tomorrow's business world, the changing business world? So over to you, anybody can take the question. Yes, Kaushik.
As you talked about the changing scenarios, the 4G coming in, we are moving into the mobile world. Primarily what you're saying is the rate of change. And today, if you really look at the rate of change, we are talking of a shift which is happening from the click and type world which is the laptop, the internet world, to the tap and swipe world, what is basically the mobile world that you're talking of. And with the new infrastructure coming in, it's going to be more and more. Now, whenever this thought comes up, the first thing that really comes into my mind is how much as HR we are in that world of tap and swipe. We all, even today, if you really look at it, are we moving as HR into that tap and swipe world? To a very large extent, my answer will be no. So the rate of change that is anyhow going to happen, I'm not too sure as to what extent organizations are ready to move to that world where, half of the interaction is going to happen on mobile. It's every possible way. You'll have applications which is going to be there with employees. You will have, there are ways and means by which you can actually find out, I don't know if that world will come in, how soon, the well-being of each and every employee. What kind of a sound sleep they had. Small things. I mean, there are so many applications. We are talking of these bands these days. There are applications which will be there with employees. The way you have financial data available, in all probability, you should have, the data on well-being available for every employee. I mean, I can go on and on, but my only question is, even at a basic functioning level, in terms of technology, the rate of change has shifted into that world, which we all know is going to be the reality in next few months. To what extent are organizations ready? My answer is not much. I think it's a long journey which has to happen, and it has to happen very quickly.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think HR will have some very serious answers to give.
Jacob, what do you think from HR professional, from a business perspective? What is really the HR need to know and need to do?
Morning, everyone. A couple of things. See, if you look around you, change is happening so fast. And where does really HR fit in this change process? I think what are companies really looking at? Practically, companies are looking at how can HR help in enterprise growth. And when you say enterprise growth, they would ideally like to look at, the world outside there's a lot of uncertainty, complexity is only getting more and more. And in this, how can HR really shock-proof the organization? So two things basically fundamentally organizations are looking at from the HR function. One is, how is HR really contributing to enterprise growth, and how is HR really working to shock-proof the organization from uncertainty and complexity? I mean, look around us, take the examples of many companies. I mean, global markets are shrinking. Companies are going into global markets, pulling out of global markets because they were not ready for some of the issues that they had to face in those global markets. And I think as these things become more and more complex, I think HR really has to see how best can you connect people and performance. And in connecting people and performance, I think the fundamental ingredients of that is your leadership, is your culture, and your values. You have to get these three tenets right. Once you get these three basics right, I think everything else will follow. Because end of the day, you look at any survey today, you look at any data point for information. Some of the things which are coming out is that more and more people are demanding good behavior from managers. People are looking at, what is it that they can get as career as a product. So these are the kind of new thinkings which are coming in, and everybody is wanting to know what will this company do for me in the future? What is in it for me before I join? Because today you look at it, people have the right to choose companies today than the companies having the right to choose employees. So these are the fundamental, I think, changes which have happened in the economy. And I think, to put it in a nutshell, the next 3 years is too far a horizon. Even the next 1.5 to 2 years, what HR should really be doing is that, how can we contribute towards enterprise growth, and what is the difference that we can bring about by connecting people and performance? Tell me, differentiating amongst people, that's your only USP that you have in the organization. Everything else you can compete on. I mean, everything else is available. You have the infrastructure, you have the finances, you can compete on anything else. But the uniqueness by which you manage your employees or manage your shareholders, the value proposition that you bring is what is required at the table today.
Perfect. Maybe I'll take the second question on technology, if that's okay. We have some ideas on the business. Companies like Accenture, companies like Samsung, global companies. So one of the new landscape that I keep thinking about is globalization. Hello, can we have the presentation, please? if you look at the last 5 years, even post-2008 recession, we know that there is no organization which is like a big island. With lemon falling down, anything can fall down, really. If that is the global nature we're talking about, we're living in a global world, connected world, my question to you is, from a HR perspective, and we're talking about the VUCA world now, which is the volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. In the VUCA world, how can HR really help organization to survive and sustain? I mean, so that we don't have more of Nokias and Sonys and so on and so forth, with the disrupted technology that happened, or disruption in business that happened.
Sure, thanks. So, good morning, just about a minute to go to all of you. I think, I was thinking about this topic yesterday before we got here, and there are 2-3 things that I think. So if I take what Jacob said and project it further, can any one of us drive a car looking at our rear view mirrors? If we could, it would be highly risky, right? So if the business is looking forward, thinking around the corner, we as HR professionals who want a place in the boardroom or on the table, we have no business to be looking at a rear view mirror and driving or following old practices. So I think one of the key things we need to develop as HR professional and gain the respect would be, to your point about marketability, etc., is, are we forward thinking? Can we imagine a future? This is
even
still
without
working,
lies, without power we
surprisingly.
can. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think we need to be, first and foremost, we need to be forward thinking. Do we invest in ourselves? Do we invest in our people to be able to look forward and say what's around the curve? Because today looking 100 feet ahead, 100 meters ahead is not enough. We have to be able to predict what's ahead. Data and analytics is helping us in doing a lot of that. Are we able to work with the business to understand the business better than the business understands it? Many of us in our roles feel that our business is only people, and that's sometimes the mistake that we make. If we know where companies make money, if we know where the workforce is shifting, if we know where the margins come from, we know how our customers behave, I think we will have a place on the table in this global world that Ashish mentioned. The second is, and I think Dr. Verma was referring to it in the previous session, cultural sensitivity. We talked about inclusion, we talked about global managers. And Jacob talked about the right that employees have to choose employers rather than the other way around anymore, right? It's a democratic environment. One of the biggest things, and having lived and worked for 4 years in our London office and having come back again, I still work in a global role. People think differently. People are wired differently. If we are not sensitive to how they feel, how they predict, how they behave, our credibility as global businesses and HR managers don't happen. One of the surveys has showed that in most of the cases, mergers and acquisitions don't fail because of business essentials, because of profitability. Mergers and acquisitions fail because of cultural mismatches, right? So that's the other big thing that we have to be careful of. I think the other thing is that we often have had this whole mindset of being something done to us. HR has not got a place on the table. We have been told to do certain things. I think we need to move out and be shapers rather than be shaped. Because if we don't, we are at the crossroads, right? Something will run over us. And in a global environment, while cultural sensitivity is important, I think we need to be very open to work more flexibly, to understand what people need, and what works for us in India, for example, with a workforce will not work outside. When I joined Accenture in 2005, most of our conference calls used to be organized at times which were odd for us, but which used to be more favorable to our US colleagues, reality, right? We used to be sitting up till late, 10 p.m., 11 p.m. Today, there is much more cognizance of the fact that we need to get a common time. It might sound like a very small thing, but it's a big mind shift.
Absolutely.
So I think those three I would call out really as things about being global managers in terms of forward thinking, understanding business better than the business, and being culturally sensitive.
Sandeep, from your perspective, and
Yeah.
you're part of a large global company too.
Yeah. So Ashish, I'll add to what what Dipayan just said. HR can basically help the business. First and foremost is HR should need to understand the business. Currently, in large organizations, what I feel is HR is very fragmented and is lot in silos. The understanding of if somebody is doing talent acquisition, he'll be just focusing on talent acquisition and maybe not so aware about the business. In talent development, again, the connect with the business will be, there will be quite a gap. So HR guys have to really understand the way business is happening, and business doesn't happen sitting at corporate offices. Business happens at the marketplace. Whenever I travel, I go out to branches, I make it a point to do market visit and visit dealers with the sales guys and understand what are the things which are happening at the shop floor, at the counter, at the dealer shop. And so there you understand actually how the business takes place. And then you can react much more faster, much more authoritatively to the business needs. If you don't understand how the counter salesperson is driving your business, then you can't make strategies which policies supporting them. So first and foremost is
Very interesting. Yeah.
understand the business, and that understanding of business will come from understanding the roles and responsibilities in detail and actually how they impact the business, the roles and responsibilities. Secondly, technology is playing a major part now. Organizations are completely wired and global this thing, and if there are processes launched, if performance appraisal process takes place, is launched, then it is launched simultaneously across in the region, which will have about 7 to 8 countries, and so you got to be much more agile and much more continuity is got to be there, so that the processes are driven uniformly and in a timely manner. Companies like ours focus a lot on timelines and completing the process, because everything are reported and are monitored through our headquarters. Even a change in the role can be identified very easily and quickly by somebody sitting in headquarters. Lastly, accuracy is very important for HR guys. I mean, whatever organizational restructuring in large organizations like Samsung, organizational restructuring is a very